Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm here with,
Necro Nicki, and my YouTube channel is also Necro Nicki.
and we're going to talk about our dedication to the death current. So, when it comes to the first question, would you like to ask a question, Necro Nicki?
Sure, have you ever had a scenario where you've randomly gotten possessed by a spirit
It
at
was,
the cemetery?
yeah, so the one time that I actually had a really negative experience at a cemetery was in a cemetery that I went to twice, and the second time was better, the first time was awful. So, the first time that I went, I was filming a video, and when I allowed the spirits to speak, they started speaking again. But when I was doing the ritual, when I started speaking, when I held up the spirit box to the camera, the entire part where I was speaking slowed down immensely, made it hours long. But as soon as that spirit box got to the point where it was their time to speak, and I said it was their time to speak, it came back to actually normal speed. That was a little bit of the weird part, but the other part was I got lumps along my spine for about 13 days. They were very painful. It made my back feel terrible, and there was lumps there. But for some reason, at the 13th day, the lumps were gone. And after that, and it was very painful. I was like, how could this have happened? Because I wasn't lifting anything. You don't lift, or I wasn't moving or lifting anything in a cemetery, and there's no way I could have thrown out my back or anything like that. So I went back there another time with a friend, and I had the same lumps appear, even though once again I'm not lifting up heavy things. I'm not even moving in a different way than I would usually. The lumps got there for about 6 to 7 days, and then they were gone. So this was a hostile graveyard. I wouldn't say that I was possessed as much as I encountered a hostile presence or multiple presence presidents. So the reason why a graveyard um, might not like you, might not vibe with your energy. One of the reasons is that because the people there are very different from you, and they don't want to accept that difference, and because they were wronged by people just like you. So that graveyard that I'm talking about is a restriction. It's basically like directly after the Civil War. It's a construction after the Southern Civil War. So what happened was the KKK came into a town and murdered 300 black people, and then a lot of them are buried in this cemetery. And in this cemetery, it completely makes sense that anybody who is white they might have some apprehension over. So not all of them are buried there, but many. So this graveyard goes back to 1870, I think, and just before. So you have all of these graves of former slaves that were murdered by white people. So you have to keep in mind, no matter which graveyard you go into, you have to keep in mind the spirits that are there. Every graveyard you go into is not going to be a graveyard that's welcoming to you. There might be one factor or another, different religion, different ethnicity, different philosophy.
Do you feel like they slowed time down when you said in just with your perspective with the box part? Did it seem slow just to you, but in the when you watch the video later, it seemed normal?
No, in the video it was slowed down to about 2 minutes. As soon as I held out the spirit box so they could give me my message, I didn't hear it at the time, but right when I did that, it cut back to normal, and then I just heard static from the spirit box. But that's only happened a couple other times, and those were the times when I knew there was something vaster that I don't understand as to why I can't deliver this message, or the spirits don't want me to deliver this message. So it's happened multiple times. I mean, at least three.
Did
Um,
did you end up staying away from that spot, or did you end up mending the relationship and
so after that first time, I was like, I gotta go back and do it right. I felt like that I didn't offer enough stuff. I did offerings. I did communication, but I felt like I didn't do it right. So I went back, a couple days later, and then I felt like I did everything right. And after that, I got lumps on my spine for about, particularly along my spine, not my back muscles, my spine. I got lumps on in those areas for about 7 days, which is almost half of what I got before. So apparently I did better somehow. But after 7 days, those lumps went away, and then I was like, okay, next time I go to that graveyard or cemetery, I need to be very prepared because this is a hostile ground towards me, so I need to be very much prepared. But yeah, I guess we can go to the next question.
Okay, I wanted to tell a story about one time I got possessed, which actually happened a couple weeks ago.
Oh
And
no.
I started taking care of this cemetery that's not too far away from me. It had a lot of trash, especially the areas by the street, a busy street. And so I was picking up trash, and this guy was stopped at the street, and he says, "Oh, who do you work for?" He noticed that I was just, cleaning up. And I said a joke, "Oh, the dead," and just made a little laugh. And he had two cute little dogs, and they were looking at me, and he said, "Yeah, they're checking you out." And then for some weird reason, I started howling at the dogs. Oh, oh, oh. And he drove off, and he just started laughing. And I was just thinking after what came over me, because sometimes if I randomly get possessed by a spirit, I know it's completely out of character. It was just really funny because I knew that wasn't me.
Yeah. So it felt like a minor possession at the time, like something wanted to communicate through you, basically.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. I've always wondered about possessions and like what it feels like. In Vodou, it's very common. They call themselves the Horsemen of the Loa, where a spirit will come into you and then do various actions, give various advice, and then they'll leave. But basically, you're like a horse with a rider that is the spirit. So I've always been curious about possession because I've never been possessed as far as I know, but it could have happened somewhere along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, especially because I've had it happen in front of friends to where they said, "Wait, did you just say that?" Because when I got possessed, I was talking in a different tone, and I said, "Wait, what do you mean? What did I say?" One time when I was gonna go visit Santa Muerte, actually at the Museum of Death, so it's funny that we're talking about this, I got possessed by a spirit, and before I started working seriously with Santa Muerte, the spirit had me talk in a creepy voice saying, "We're going to see her," just in a weird tone that I normally wouldn't be talking to one of my best friends. And then when I said, "Well, repeat, what did I say?" And then he said, "Dude, you had a weird way of saying that." And I said, "Oh, wow, I don't remember saying that." So that was one of the first times, but if my friend didn't tell me, I wouldn't have remembered. But I have been possessed a lot, actually, during ritual and meditation and various experiences where I do remember, but who knows how many times I could have done or said things that I don't remember, because I know obviously I've had times where I've had friends tell me that.
So you feel like you're a bit of a conduit for these spirits.
I can be. It doesn't happen super often. Usually it's when I invite it, but at the same time, I'm not fearful and I don't get upset or spooked out, so I feel as though they kind of know. They can just sense that it's cool to go possess me.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's spirits are quirky, so like they might find somebody they really like. They might find somebody that they want to go into, but completely avoid other people. So there's a whole nother level of like quirkiness that we're not conscious of that is very specific to the dead. So that's definitely makes sense. So do you want me to do a question or do you want to do a question?
I can do a few. Have you ever used graveyard dirt in your rituals? What do you think? How do you feel about it?
So graveyard dirt is very potent, but it very much depends on the grave that it has come from. So the most valuable graveyard dirt that I have is actually from a friend that is graveyard dirt from her grandfather, which basically is the only person that was ever nice to her, actually saved her from a situation. So I have that graveyard dirt that's very valuable. It's very positive graveyard dirt. I have other samples from various cemeteries that I label as far as what time and what place I got them from, and and then those samples I'll use based on whatever I'm trying to manifest. If I'm trying to do a love spell, I might use this graveyard. If I'm trying to do something that manifests strength, I might use this graveyard dirt. If I'm trying to make a spell or a talisman or what have you, that is very positive, I might use the most virtuous graveyard dirt that I have, which is from either a good man or a good woman, just like my friend sent me. So I use it in talismans, I use it in spells, and sometimes I'll sprinkle it around and create a barrier. But I always have a good supply of graveyard dirt and it labeled properly so that I can basically spiritually do whatever I want with it. I actually have some graveyard dirt sprinkled in with my Elder Futhark runes. It's been very not lucrative, but very advantageous to my path. It's been wonderful to work with it, figure out how to work with it, because there's not a whole lot of sources that will tell you how to work with graveyard dirt or cemetery dirt or whatever. So I've had to kind of form my own practice and figure out how to use it, kind of teach myself. So yeah, I use it quite often. Do you use graveyard dirt?
I do. I was gifted some years ago, and like you said, that death essence of it, well, I mean, you didn't really say this, but I can kind of tell you use it a lot. So just the energy and the essence of it is kind of addicting. I remember when I first got it, every ritual I had to use sprinkle a little graveyard dirt, give a little offering, and I was just noticing that extra oomph in how I just liked the vibe that it gave. The texture of it, the smell of it, the way it looks. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite tools to use.
For sure, and you might even want to associate various samplings of graveyard dirt before a deity or a spirit. So with Santa Muerte, I have a permanent bronze bowl of graveyard dirt before that I gathered at some time, and then I use it with Odin as well. I might put some before him. I might use it in working with Odin. I guess you just have to be conscious of the spirits and beings that you want to associate it with. At the same time, it's not something that anybody should just dive into. Just be very cautious at the beginning. Go to graves that seem like they lived a full life in a very peaceful cemetery. But it can get bad if you don't know what you're doing. But besides that, I think that graveyard dirt is a wonderful enhancer of whatever you want to do. All right, do we want to go to the next topic?
Yeah, how do you like to give offerings? Or are there certain types of offerings that you usually give to spirits at the cemetery?
So alcohol, very good offering. It's specifically if I'm going to offer something that I want to burn up quickly, I might put a bowl down either on my shrine or in the graveyard and pour flammable rum in it. Ray and Nephew flammable rum, overproof rum it's called, and then I'll light it with a match, and then that offering is very quickly consumed. Or you can pour beer or even hard liquor onto the ground next to the graves and make that an offering. Honestly, it's almost as simple as that. All you have to say is, I offer you this drink, so and so, that you may drink as you see fit, and then you make that offering. It doesn't have to be one beer per grave. In the most recent graveyard rituals that me and my group did, I used one beer for two different graves right beside each other. I also, when I go into a graveyard, some people offer pennies or coins at the beginning of the graveyard entrance, which is the best way to do it. For me, I wait until I go to a crossroads in the graveyard, then I'll offer pennies, and I'll say something like, spirits of this graveyard, I make this offering to you. May you look well upon us. Something like that, and you drop the change in that crossroads. These are very basic offerings you can do. Sometimes you can offer blood, but you gotta be very careful leaving your blood in the cemetery. I wouldn't recommend it. I do it often, but it's because I kind of know what I'm doing. Another offering can be just prayers, your time, cleaning up the area, or just speaking with the dead as if they were alive. There's a number of things that you can offer, and all of them are valuable, really. Did you want to talk a little bit about what you offer?
Lately, especially with the cemetery that I've been dedicating myself to recently, I usually have been cleaning it up and giving my time and getting to know the cemetery, connecting myself energetically. In the past, I did the coin thing just years ago because I just heard that was something that you could do. And crystals too. But I would put the crystal somewhere where it would charge. And those are the offerings that I've given so far.
Yards, however you want to frame it, are talismans. Sometimes I'll leave a crystal talisman, sometimes I'll leave a metal one, sometimes I'll leave a wooden one. But when you leave something in the graveyard, pressed into the dirt at a certain grave, or in a crossroads, something like that, or gather dirt from the crossroads, or gather dirt from the grave, and apply it to the talisman or the amulets or whatever you want to use it for, then it can empower that. It can empower it with death energy. So I've left different talismans and crystals in the graveyard, then have made them. That was the finishing note of it being a talisman. And then I gather it, and then I make it a part of jewelry that I can allow to feed my death energy or become a conduit to which I can speak to the dead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I definitely have done that and charged quite a few items just by bringing the items with me to the cemetery.
That makes sense. All right, did you want to go on to your next question, or I can do one? Either way.
And what types of graves do you usually gravitate towards? Is it how they look, symbols, their title? How do you know you usually want to work with the spirit, or you just kind of hear them call or vibe with the energy?
A lot of the way that I find graves is vibing with the energy. I find that most of the graves that I'm gravitated towards are ones that are as old as possible, but also ones that people live long lives. There's these two graves in my favorite cemetery that are infants or maybe even babies, and there's no grass that grows around them. It's a very sad patch. No, all the grass around them is dead and it never grows back. But a lot of the graves that I've offered and helped those babies. But a lot of the graves that I've gravitated towards are those that live a full life of strong people and honestly just draw me in because of their natural essence that they left behind. Um, beyond that, beyond that feeling that I look for, beyond that help that I want to provide, there's not a lot that I go on as far as being attracted to graves.
I go towards the energy usually as well. Although sometimes if I kind of feel as though the person lived a magical life with the various symbols, it intrigues me because then I could think that they're experienced if I want them to do tasks for me or build a relationship. Of course, a mutual one. Other types of spirits that interest me are ones that have fought in the war for, say, baneful magic or just getting to know them. I've even just had a whistling spirit get to know me, and I know they say that a lot of the times the whistling spirits were soldiers. I know it doesn't always have to be like that, but I have had one of those spirits gravitate towards me.
That makes sense. So I think that I have a question. So when it comes to your graveyard path, like what like started you on that? Why are you attracted to a path like this?
In the past, I just have always been interested in death energy. My name Necro even means death. And more recently, within the last month, I've taken it more seriously as far as cemetery magic because I've usually gravitated towards death gods and deities. But now as far as necromancy goes, because I feel there's different types of necromancy, it doesn't have to be at a cemetery. It could be either with ancestors, it can be with ghosts, it can be with death gods, it could be at a graveyard. There's just so many different types of necromancy, but with this form, I've just recently fully dedicated myself to a local cemetery, and it's just more of the timing. Transformation, I'm kind of obsessed over, and just the whole vibe of it, I see it as very beneficial as opposed to the general public being more on the fearful side with death. I look at its beauty and what it has to offer, and it's just part of the cycle.
Yeah, I'm definitely gravitated towards death energy for a similar reason. It just seems like it draws us in, those who are meant for it. It feels like the spirits want to reach out to certain people, and really the graveyard itself, which becomes like this unified spirit, reaches out to people to come and take care of it and communicate with it. So I completely commiserate with you on that for sure. All right, so have you ever had a graveyard give back to you? Like, we offer things to a graveyard and spirits, but have you ever had a graveyard give back to you?
Yeah, I've had various objects from nature be presented to me to where they wanted me to hold and feel the death essence of pine cones. Also just showed me some berries and different objects from nature. Also psychically, I've noticed my gifts and just energy feel more intense. So I feel magically I'll notice just some benefits. So for example, with seeing things more vividly, spirits and whatnot from spending more time, I feel there is a lot of benefits one could have with connecting more to the death current.
That makes sense. Yeah, so I definitely get a lot of death energy back, which I can use in various ways. I think that the only times when something was given to me materially from a graveyard is my main office, the main graveyard that I go to. I call it my main office. But it was, so there's two things that were given to me. So when I was walking up to one grave, there was this little cat statue directly looking at me, like it was directly pointed towards me. I'm like, I feel like it wants me to take this. And so when I left some dollar bills and another offering, and I made this I made a cross sign with oil because that person was Christian. And then I made the exchange. You never take anything from a graveyard unless you leave something there, unless you make an offering of either your time, your care, or something material. So if you shouldn't just take something from a graveyard. But that cat, it disappeared not long after, and I don't know where it went, but it was this little cat statue. And I feel like I get something back, but then it just left this house for some reason. The other time that I can remember is that upon this one grave, beneath this candle, there was a prayer card that was directed towards me as I was walking towards it. Well, it didn't do it before my eyes, but it was directed towards where I was walking. And then I picked it up. I'm like, this is the exact prayer card. Like it was like it might have been a Santa Muerte card, or it might have been a different one that I was thinking about that I wanted. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about how the dead can manifest things in our lives, and we can add grave dirt to different spells to manifest various things that we want, or we can attribute to knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you have certain deities that you work with that are associated with death?
Draga Drot.
Oh, or I guess at least a couple of your favorites, because you probably work with quite a few.
San Expedite, Santa Muerte, but mainly Draga Drotin, which is a form of Odin that is kind of the leader of the dead, the person who leads them to where they need to go. You could say Papa Legba and Baron Samedi, but I don't work with them as much as I used to. I work with Papa Legba from time to time, but Odin as Draga Drotin, the leader and the king of the dead. I usually work with that form of Odin when I'm in a graveyard, and Papa Legba, but Draga Drotin is a form of Odin that a lot of people don't know about. It's a form of Odin. There's so many different functions of Odin that he needs different names to describe the different functions. That's why there's so many names for Odin. And Draga Drotin, Lord of the Dead, is definitely what I usually associate with death and death energy. That's how I feed into that energy. That's how I understand it. And that's how I communicate and become one with it. Now, once again, my second one, I might have made an error there. My second one is Papa Legba. Papa Legba is just below how I connected with the dead with Draga Drotin, Odin. But yeah, does that make sense?
Absolutely. I work with Santa Muerte pretty often and give her offerings. And I would say the other deity that I really associated with death is actually Azazel. And I've been working a lot with him. I have over the years, but even more recently with death energy and just different ways to push the cycle with it, as far as pushing things away to complete transformation in various aspects of my life. Also, I've been getting closer to plants and green magic and working with Saturnian plants, and that's a newer part of my path.
That makes sense. It's so the thing about plants is that they cover like anybody's path. It's very plants are great like that. Like plant spirits are very they're easier to approach and they're easier to offer to, and also there's various plants for every tradition out there. So it's plants are green magic and green witchery are it's a really good path to go through. Even in contacting gods or spirits, there's definitely a value to plants and their spirits that most people don't take to heart or really recognize. But for sure, there's the plant way is a good way for sure.
I've been doing a lot of meditations lately and channeling plant spirits, and that's a newer thing. I've done plant magic throughout my life and used plants in a lot of rituals, used safe and proper plants in teas and different things, but as far as straight up channeling the spirits today, I did a couple hours worth of meditations actually with various plant spirits, and it's very interesting. I would say that, and it just seems less chaotic, more chill and grounded, which makes sense because most plants are pretty grounded.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that totally makes sense. So plants, a lot of people don't think of them as having different emotions spiritually, but they definitely do. They have different natures, they have different emotions, they have different, not in the emotions that we have necessarily, but they have their equivalents. And it makes so no two species of plants has the exact same psyche or mind or something like that. So you kind of choose what plants that you connect with, but also when I'm doing a lot of making talismans, let's say I'm making a bag talisman, I'll throw in some kind of herb, let's just say rosemary. And what I'll say is I might offer a couple pennies to that herb that I'm putting into the talisman and say thank you for being a part of this, and then I tie up the talisman. Of course, if I'm adding other things, I won't tie it up immediately. But you can offer to and respect plants even in just using the herbs. Even if you're cooking, you can always make that more a fundamental spiritual act or fundamental spiritual awareness for your activity than a lot of people understand, because most people think that plants don't have souls, animals don't have souls, but there's, or at least spirits at the very, very least. So yeah, as far as respecting plants goes, it's definitely a topic and a horizon that we are all going to shoot towards as we progress in this age. Does that make sense?
For sure. And how it relates to death energy is the harvest. There's the scythe that the reaper holds, which is a primary tool in harvesting plants, and just the cycle of how it's good for the dirt to have even dead plants, and how what we were talking about earlier about just how some people don't even think about how much death energy they're surrounded with by the daily, even just being on the dirt and the ground, the history and everything, and just the cycle of it all.
Yeah, I often think that human beings are kind of like whatever you view as death. We're being reaped to make the fertilizer for the soil of the astral realm, and then we move upward. We continue upward towards the various vegetation, animals, and beings that are in the astral realm, all the way up to gods. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding of the spirit and soul. So we misunderstand it and think that we are dominant. We think we're superior, but when in fact we are just a part of the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like how you mentioned thanking the rosemary and even giving a couple of pennies to it with what you were creating. I always like to make sure to say give gratitude, whether it's for a plant spirit or a deity or the universe. Gratitude goes a long way with everything.
And a lot of people, so like gratitude and just saying thank you is bigger than people think. Like saying
Oh
thank
yeah.
you is something that doesn't get thank you very often, very important. I mean, actually that's true with people as well. Like if nobody has ever thanked for something, then you thank them, they feel better. That's
Yeah.
also true with plants and animals. They just instinctually know, like their spirituality, their spirit just instinctually knows that they're being thanked. Um, when it comes to light, so a lot of people think that candles and creations of light can't be an offering, but I can guarantee. So a lot of the times when I work with Kali Ma, the best offerings that I give her, where it makes her smile. So like, I'll just say something crazy here, but um, so her statue will change facial expressions based on how she is approving of me. And, I know a lot of people aren't going to believe that. But I will say that there are offerings of candles that you can do to gods. There's offerings of candles that I give to her. There's offerings of ringing a bell, of mantras, and of ghee, and things that, might not be like a meal. They might not be like a complete offering like we think of it as, but there is light offerings like that of candles and oils. So that's no less of an offering if you give it in sincerity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I haven't worked with her too much. I've only done a couple meditations, but I feel as though she's a deity I want to work with more seriously in the near future. But I try and just stay on task with what I'm doing or if I'm working with various deities. For example, since the last time we talked, I've been working with Loki more, and then these plant spirits, and then I'm taking on being a caretaker of the cemetery. So I try not to take too much on because I want to take the time, even though I do rituals every day and meditation for the most part. I don't want to just take on too much and not give them the respect and time that they deserve. But she's definitely going to be a deity I'm going to work with closely in the near future.
Yeah, you don't want to split up your time too much. You want to dedicate to whatever you're doing right now and truly dedicate to it, then move on later. Like that makes complete sense because you need to attune to what you're doing right now. You don't need to like do everything at once. If you do, then you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to do things half-assed. So it makes sense to like just, focus on one thing for right now or a few things and then move on later. I will say that people on the right hand and left hand path don't like to talk about Kali Ma. So on the right hand path, she looks like a strong woman. She's a warrior. And people on the right hand path don't really like how she looks, even though it's all symbolic. And then, well, she still does. She's a demon slayer. Don't get me wrong, she's a demon slayer. And a lot of people on the left hand path don't like to talk about her because she does not fit the stereotype for any right hand path god, like at all, or goddess. She is vicious. She has the skulls of demons draped around her neck. She has blood coming out of her mouth. She is a warrior. She is a mother. And she is a goddess that you do not want to fuck with. And especially if you fuck with her children, you are fucked. But she is the ferocity of the female divine. So she is divine, but she's also a ferocity. That's why a lot of people, like on the right hand or left hand path, just don't like her
That's
because
weird. I never heard of that before. I've only known people who've said positive things, but I'm not on the right and I'm not on the left, so maybe that's why I don't understand each of those perspectives. But I've known a lot of people on the left hand path who are all about it. Usually, most people I know on the left hand path are about the dark divine
but she's
fears.
dark. That they see that the reason why people perceive her as dark is because she does not look like anything any religion would like, or like,
Uh,
and she's actually
I like it.
right hand path oriented. Anybody on the left hand path who truly knows her is honestly scared of her because she's the expression of the feminine divine, the feminine mother. That if you're, I guess you could say, a demon or trying to bring one of her children down, she will smite you with like the fucking ferocity that she has. She also represents the untamed female. She represents the female that is not subjugated to man. She and might sound like Lilith, but she actually destroys demons. So it's not like Lilith in that way. A lot of people think that Lilith and her are very similar. They're both ferocious. Kali Ma more ferocious, but they they both have that motherly instinct from their different vantage points. So it's honestly, working with Kalima, and she's my first before anybody else, like before anything else in this world, is working with her is wonderful. If you're her child, she has protected me from a lot of things. She's protected me from a lot of curses. She's shown me where I'm going to go when I die before I return back here. But if you're somebody trying to hate her or attack her or her children, she's very strong. She's very strong. And I've had Satanists that try to curse me, but then encounter Kalima and then they're just started to burn on their face and their body. So she's not somebody to trifle with. But if you approach her with honesty and sincerity and loving her, she's your mom. That's it.
That's awesome.
So I guess do we have anything to wrap up here, or we got all the questions down?
I think we can just end it on that. And hopefully next time we chat, maybe I'll have something to say about her. Work with more.
Yeah, Kalima's my thing, definitely. At the least of the things I could say. But she is really my everything. At any rate, thank you very much for appearing on the channel, Necro Nicki.
Thank you for having me. Until next time.
Until next time, and we'll see all of you on the channel in the future.
Bye.